Hi, welcome to the Cookie Ranch, and today I'm going to show you how I get started making sugar cookies. These happen to be Christmas ones for the holidays. And the first thing I do is get a prep area ready. I also have a large piece of parchment paper down on my work surface. This will help me not need to use so much flour that might get worked into my cookie dough and make it tough. Next thing you need to do is have some cookie dough ready. This is the cookie dough that I prefer to use when I am going to make cutout cookies of various shapes. And it's just a sugar cookie recipe that I had made up, and I chilled it in the fridge, and it sat out for a little bit. I had it wrapped in some plastic wrap, and there's actually a reason for that. I like to roll my dough out with the plastic wrap, and I kind of discovered this by accident. You can get all kinds of rolling pins. You need one that is the same diameter or width all the way across from end to end. Here's another type. This is the type that you would find in cake decorating, and it has these little guides on. It's a depth guide that keeps me from rolling my dough any thinner than this little band here. I like to use this rolling pin after a while because it's larger, and my dough a lot of times exceeds the width of this rolling pin, and then I need to go to something wider. I am going to roll my dough out so that it's convenient for me on this particular piece of parchment. The size of it, the shape of it. So I just get started thinning my dough out a little bit. I'm not going to go down too far, but I do work in several directions because on the edges you can get lifted up areas, and here you've got high point and a low point, and we want to make that all even. If we don't, our cookies aren't going to bake evenly. Okay, so I've rolled that out quite a bit to where I can get started using my next larger roller. And I could have used this alone if I wanted to, but I didn't. Okay, and by using this rolling pin, these guides here are going to stop me from rolling my dough too thin. I like to roll my dough a little bit thick for these cookies so that they have a little bit of heft to them, and it seems to make them a little bit softer as well. They're not quite as crispy, and part of that has to do with your recipe as well. See, I changed the direction of my rolling pin, and it's only allowing me to roll the dough so thin. I can't go any thinner than a certain point. And that's good, that's what I want. Notice how I have the plastic wrap on top, and I haven't lifted it up and changed the position of it because the dough kind of squishes underneath it. It's actually squished out from underneath the plastic here, but that's okay. I just have to watch to make sure it doesn't stick on my rolling pin, but it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, make sure we get that rolled all nice, even and smooth. Okay, I've got it rolled out to about the depth of my rolling pin guides here, and I'm ready to cut out cookies. So I can remove my plastic wrap, and I'm going to set that aside because I'll use it for my next batch. I haven't been using flour on the dough itself to roll it out, but I do need some flour for my cookie cutter so that they won't stick to the cookie dough, because this dough is kind of sticky. So what I did is I got the flattest plate I could find. You could even use like a paper plate, and I put some flour out on this dish. And what that allows me to do is to take my cookie cutter and just dip it in this flour. Swirl it around a little bit, dip it. And as you can see, it leaves a little bit of a coating of flour on the edges, which will help resist sticking of the dough to my cookie cutter. And once I stick it into the dough for the first time, some of the fats from the cookie dough will stick to the edges of this, and I'll stick it into the flour again, and it'll help the flour to stick to it even better than the previous time. Okay, I like to start on the outside edge. You may want to start in the middle, but the key is to try and fit as many cuts from your cookie cutter into your dough. Almost like putting together a puzzle backwards, or making the puzzle. Put your cookie cutter into the dough straight. You don't want to lean it like this and cut. You always want to go straight down in. And then just wiggle it slightly on the flat surface and lift up. Okay, now I'm going to have a little bit of the grease residue from the cookie dough on my cookie cutter. So now when I dip it in my flour and swirl it around, I'll have a better coating of flour for my next cut. See the difference? Okay, now I look at this and I want to see how my next cut will fit. I want to get as close as I can. I don't want to touch. Some people like to touch the edges of their previous cookie. I don't. Okay, I'm dipping into my flour every time I cut, just to make sure I don't have any sticks. Press and wiggle. Dip in the flour. Watching my edge here and my previous cut edge. Push straight down. Wiggle. Lift up. Dip in the flour. And do the same. Okay, I've got a nice spot here that will fit another cut. But what happened is I accidentally set my cookie cutter on the edge of this previously cut cookie because I couldn't see the edge. My hand was in the way. And all I did before I cut was gently set the cookie cutter down to see where it fit. Because it was overlapping, I just gently picked it up and moved it. I check all my other edges. And now they seem to be clear. See, the first time I had it setting on the edge of previously cut cookie. Carefully picked it up and repositioned. And now I can make my cut again. Straight press down and wiggle a little bit. Okay. Turn your cookie cutters any direction you need to make everything fit the way you want it to try to get the best fit. And you're going to have places that just don't allow your cookies to fit the way you want them to, or your cookie cutter. And that's okay. It'll look like you're wasting dough, but you're not, because you're going to reuse that, or you're going to do something else, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. Okay. And, alright, I don't have room for another cookie right here from this cookie cutter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my other cookie cutters and find a smaller one that will fit into this area. I like this Christmas light. And I have some Christmas ornaments, and I have some smaller Christmas ornaments for really tiny places. I have a cute little Santa head here. See, I have a variety of sizes, really tiny to a little bit larger. And I'm going to use those in these smaller areas. Again, I want to dip those into my flour. Actually, I'm going to do the Santa first. Yeah. Cute, cute. So it's good to have a variety of sizes of cookie cutters. Okay, this one I almost cut into my previous cookie because I wasn't paying attention. But luckily I was just on the edge and we're okay. Now this Santa does not look like he's going to fit in any of the remaining large areas of cookie dough. So I'm going to set him aside. I'm actually going to dip him in flour so he'll be ready to go next time. And I'm going to try a different cookie cutter. Look around my edges. Okay, that one fits. Cut, wiggle, lift up. Okay. And now I have a very tiny spot right here. So, okay, I gotta dip that in flour. And it's not touching any of the cookies, but it's really close right here. Press down, wiggle it, lift up. Okay. Do this one over here. Press down. Lift up. Okay. So, there's a little bit of flour around the edge of some of the cookies that I cut out, and that's the residue that came off of the cookie cutter. That's okay. It helps separate my cutout cookie shape that I want from the leftover dough, and there's not that much flour. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start peeling away the excess cookie dough and placing it into my reserve cookie dough that I had from the first cut. I already cut some cookies out. And cover it with plastic so it'll dry out. Remove all the edges of the cookie dough from around my cut shapes. Put them into my scrap bowl. Call it a scrap bowl, but it's scraps that we're going to reuse because there's nothing wrong with this dough. I haven't used a lot of flour, so it's not making my cookie dough dry and tough as if I would have used flour. And look how easily the dough lifts off of the parchment paper. It's not to say it won't ever stick, but it sure does make a difference. Okay, now I can't really get in here without bumping my other cookies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a large flat spatula, and I've dipped the end into my flour dish so that the cookie dough won't stick. And what I'm going to do is take away some of these outer cookie shapes, sliding it underneath, picking it up, and you can either slide it onto your hand like this. See, it doesn't want to come off. So sometimes what I like to do is just flip it over carefully in my hand and then flip it back and set it on my cookie sheet. My cookie sheets are large and flat, and I like to cover them with parchment paper because you can reuse the parchment paper and your cookies don't stick. And you want to place these 1 to 2 inches apart from each other on your cookie sheet. If you know your cookie recipe and how much your cookies puff up or expand, that will help you to know where to place them on the cookie sheet. I like to use a sugar cookie dough recipe that doesn't puff up or expand too much because it distorts the shapes of my cookies. When I go to decorate them, that makes for a problem. Okay. And I've got another one over here I can get to.